recent news, the Minnesota Police Department has been disbanded because of the the civil unrest and also just some of the practices that they've done. How do you think that's gonna play out?
I think it's a really interesting and quite frankly good first step because I think obviously one of the biggest problems in our American system or social system is how the police as an organization and policing uh, negatively oppresses and affects uh, Black people in this country. So I think that kind of these protests, like I think it's the 13th day now of just peaceful yet uh, very uh, organized and well thought up. And when I say thought up, I mean many people going and organization going on online. So I think it's good. I think it's a good first step. It means that the systems that are in place and the people who created those systems are actually listening.
Absolutely. And one thing that's been really um, seems to be kind of dividing America is we have people who are fighting these injustices and I guess sort of support the actions that the protesters are taking. And then, I guess sort of the other side, they're complaining about some of the how the riots have ensued, looting and just I know like Target, for example, was destroyed in Minneapolis. And I guess I was curious what you thought about how 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 the media and how some of the population has framed these protests as being this sort of anarchy, if you were to say.
Yeah. So I think it's a very narrow-minded perspective because if you have a scale, on one side you have hundreds and hundreds of years of systemic oppression. The United States facing in many ways the same problems that we have been since Jim Crow. Obviously, there has been movement forward and it's better now. Trust me, I am recognizing that. But the problems are the same, and the backbone of racism in this country is still there. So you have what I see as hundreds of years of oppression. And then you have on the other side, um, kind of opposers, people trying to disregard the protests and the movement and what this movement is for by looking at a small sect of, again, I don't condone it, but a small sect of rioters and looters. And in many ways, I think that to look at a very small sect of a very big peaceful movement and try to disregard an entire movement because of a very small sect of something is a straw man argument. And it's disregarding what is behind that movement and the power and influence and why it's there. So to say like, oh, this entire movement and these protests are bad because of a few looters. By the way, people aren't looting anymore, right? This is day 13 or something. But uh, DC, for one, I only know this because I live here, but there's no more curfew because people are not being violent anymore. I think it was just in the beginning, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, like the in the early parts of the protests, things were getting really nasty, and I think that's because you know a large percentage of this population, blacks and minorities, they've been oppressed pretty much since the inception of America. There's been slavery. Post slavery, we had Jim Crow laws, and that riddled their way of life. And then the civil rights, they finally got their rights, and there was no more segregation. But then came after that was mass incarceration. So throughout American history, they've had to deal with this systematic oppression within our system. Um, and I think with the mixture of our current president, with you know perhaps even the coronavirus, and I think we've reached a breaking point in our society where these things that have been riddled in our society for so long, I think people are fed up with it. And that's why these protests are more than just about George Floyd. They're more than just about um, the some of the other killings that have happened in the last year or so. This is this is much bigger than that. It's a much bigger issue that we're talking about. And I think that honestly, with these protests, peaceful or not, have been are going to change the world. We're going to be talking about these forever.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's why I was saying it was good about that. It was the Minneapolis Police Department, correct?
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so great because it means that finally there's some systemic change that obviously needed to happen. And something else back to your last question that I was thinking about is I'll use an example. So let's say you're a dog owner and you have a dog, and every time you see the dog, you kick it. You come home and you kick the dog. And then one day you come home and you try and pet the dog, and then the dog bites your hand. After you've been kicking it and abusing it for its entire existence in life. Is it fair for you as a dog owner to blame the dog for fighting back and for defending itself? I think that a lot of these right-leaning news organizations right now um, are very quick to blame the riders and the leaders, when in reality, if you were them and you were seeing your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your friends and people that look just like you, teenagers unarmed, kids getting shot in the street every single week, another video. I mean, I would probably be doing the same thing.